Okay, here we are. I am trying to accept your
Hello,
request.
can you see me now?
I see myself. That is so strange. And I only hear you. I hear you, but I cannot see you. This is so
Oh,
weird.
wow. I don't know. It's really weird. I can see
Hmm.
you.
Yeah, this has never happened before. And I've done a lot of lives with
Yeah.
people, and this has never happened before.
It's very strange indeed. But I will take it anyway as a sign. Maybe we should keep going anyway. I don't know. Maybe some people can see me.
I
I
think I have no idea why, because I checked my settings right before we went live to make sure that I was going to be able to see you and hear you and all that. I'm trying to see if I can do something in my settings, but no.
Yeah, it's very weird, but
Yeah.
yeah.
The thing is, I have a problem with my right ear, and I really would have preferred to be able to see your face.
Yeah,
But
sure.
let's just, if you just make sure that you speak clearly so that I can hear you.
Yeah, sure.
And
Or,
let's
or,
just,
or yeah, what can we do to make this work? Because
because
it's
I can
crazy.
only see myself and I can hear you. So let's just keep on going because I cannot see you. I can only hear you, but let's just keep going. I don't
Yeah,
know
I
why,
mean, as
but it is probably Mercury retrograde.
yeah,
That is exactly what it
yeah,
is.
sure. And for me, this is also kind of a lesson, those kind of intuitive lessons in some kind of way, because everything is perfect in some kind of way. So it's still a lesson. For me, for example, it is a lesson to keep going. Sometimes you may find obstacles, right? And these things don't work, and this other thing doesn't work, and still you can make it work. So, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, because the thing is, you in the beginning when I started with podcasts, with lives, with creating courses, doing anything, or just offering my services, then I wanted it to be perfect. Oh, it needs to be perfect. And I think a lot of people, they wait because they're like, oh no, I don't have a good podcast intro. It's not professional. It's not this, it's not that. But people aren't waiting for that stuff. They just want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah.
So let's just keep going.
Yeah,
I
it's
cannot
like,
see you, but I'm gonna pretend that I can see you. I'm looking at the lens, and
yeah.
I don't
Well,
know.
it's too bad because, yeah, it's always better when you can see something, right? And wow, this actually, yeah, as I said, you can learn a lot from this because I actually wanted to talk about that part about how logic, right? Most people is driven by what you can see because yeah, it's better when you can see something, when you can touch it, when you know, okay, you can read it. You can read the situation, you can read things. But then when you can see and you have to rely in other ways to build your trust, then what do you do? So not all things are seen and they are still there. So that's another important lesson, right?
And I'm still trying to mess with the settings, but I'm just gonna stop because I can hear you, so it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely this Mercury retrograde. Sometimes I feel that it's not really that bad, but this one has definitely been messing with technology, I feel.
Yeah, well, with technology and with many other things, it's a time where a lot of patterns and subconscious things come to the surface. So we are kind of confronted in many different ways. For example, yeah, this situation to me is confronting because yeah, it's like kind of that perfectionism wound. Like yeah, everything has to be perfect, everything has to be on point. And even before I started this life, it was for me like I just want to have fun, I just want to spread a message, and that's it. Like not take it everything like so seriously, so perfect. And maybe this is part of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that's what I've noticed anyway, because I talked about that a few days ago. A lot of people are wanting to help other people. They're getting more clear on what their gifts are, on what they want to share. But social media is kind of a double-edged sword because there's a ton of paid advertisement I'm noticing on Facebook, on Instagram, of coaches that are like super perfect looking, and they're very generic looking, and they all have like the same type of marketing. They're all like, if you do this, this is what you have to do. You have to do this. If you're not doing this, you're doing it wrong. And it's like this perfect profile, perfectly curated message. And if you're not doing that, then oh no, you're doing it wrong. And in my experience, that's not at all what people look for when they're looking for help, especially when it's about energy, when they're looking for intuitive assistance. That's going to be more off-putting. So
Yeah.
I'm sure that people that are going to start to watch the replay of this, or the people that are here live now, they're going to be like, oh yeah, you're also just people going through normal stuff. You live
Yeah,
on this
like
planet.
things happen. Things
Mm-hmm.
happen.
Yep.
And yeah, I feel like yeah, people need to feel validated in their lives, you know, like your pain is valid, your imperfection is valid, your anger is valid, like all your emotions are valid. So yeah, it's not
Mm-hmm.
about being perfect. And yeah, we always find for someone to relate to. So yeah, this is relatable. We all go through unexpected things.
Yeah. Yeah, and what you said about emotions, exactly. That's another thing you'll often see, that people are like, oh, you're not very spiritual if you show your anger or your grief or all of these things. But to me, that's kind of like a band-aid solution. It's kind of a new age solution. Like, oh yeah, we all have to just preach love and light. But that's not gonna be the solution to you really looking at the stuff that you need to release. You need to look at it and you need to feel it completely. And like when you look at people like Jesus, Mother Mary, other ascended masters, Mary Magdalene, they were not just perfect and they were not always in a good mood. They were humans, and all emotions are part of the spiritual journey and of your basically your journey towards enlightenment.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like, yeah, we have to embrace our wholeness. Like we are whole. We're not one thing or another. Like, and I feel like that's when we really can achieve like our greatest potential, because then we are complete. Like in our shadow, we find our greatest light. So it's almost about that. But yeah, this wrong idea that the path of spirituality or enlightenment is to arrive to perfection, it's not that. It's actually to arrive to acceptance of who you are completely, and love
Mm-hmm.
yourself completely and unconditionally. So
Mm-hmm.
it's more like that.
Yes, and especially because when you look at people like the ascended masters that were human at one point, they all went through their initiations, modern mystery school initiations. And I feel that for people that are awakening, that are waking up to the fact that there's more going on than just their physical reality, it's often through catalyst events like trauma that trigger for them an awakening, or the loss of a family member, the loss of their house, an illness, cancer, a big event that for them triggered this whole awakening. And it's in feeling all of that and accepting that that's fine, it happened to you, and accepting that all of these things are part of your human experience. Exactly. And they're all teachers. They're all here to teach you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in the pain is when we find our greatest strength and bravery and everything. And now that you talked about this, I would like to ask you, like, how did you arrive to this path of spirituality? Did you always knew that you were, I don't know, a channeler and akashic record reader, that you had like kind of this power? How do you came across this ascended master and dragon things, for example?
I think each person has the potential to become completely in alignment with their higher self, if that is what they want. If that is what they want. And like power, I think everyone has that power. I think it's a natural thing that we all have, but most people never tap into it because there's no need. And I reposted a video a few days ago. I promise I'm going to get to, I'm leading up to the answer.
Yeah.
I posted a video a few days ago of another person, and I commented on her video, and she basically said empaths or intuitive abilities are the result of a trauma response of having to be hypervigilant in your childhood. And that is a pattern that indeed I see with a lot of my friends, with myself, with a lot of clients. If you, on a soul level, chose to have a tumultuous childhood, you chose to go through trauma early on in life, then you will also, like subconsciously, you will want to anticipate the trauma. You'll want to anticipate the stuff that's happening around you. And that's when you start to naturally tap into these intuitive abilities that we all have, but other people may not need them. And when you look at other mammals like deer, what's her name again? Elaine Aron, I think, the woman that coined the term hypersensitivity or highly sensitive person. In her book, she talks about deer also having a small percentage, I think between 10 to 15% of all deer are highly sensitive. So they are highly intuitive and more in alignment with their instincts and sensing energies around them. And it's actually to protect the entire tribe, the entire group of deer. And I believe that that's the same thing with human beings. There's a percentage of them that is just naturally more psychic, and everyone has the ability to be psychic.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. Like, we all have the power. It's just that some don't develop it, right? Or don't recognize it because, all this material world, just very anchored in the physical world, and not recognizing that we are also spirits, that we are souls. And for me, it's also like that. I think like it's a path that you choose in some kind of way, but also I feel like it also can come to you, as you said, through pain, through traumatic experiences, because for me it was like that. Like, I never felt like I was a psychic or that I was very intuitive, but unconsciously in my life, I've always been more emotionally driven. Like, I'm always more about listening to my heart, listening to my emotions than my logical mind. And for some people, it might be like, that's wrong because that's irrational. You are making things wrong because you are listening more to your emotions than your brain.
Mm-hmm.
And I've discovered along the path that even when I'm wrong, I'm right.
Yeah, and it's through these events that you will notice that sometimes you are pushed into making an illogical decision, and that's what happened in my case. But I was a psychic child, basically. I was psychic as a child, and my mom is a Reiki practitioner and a channeler. So I kind of started doing all of this when I was still very young, and I was doing automatic writing and meditation, self-hypnosis, all of these things when I was like around 12, 13. I think I started together with my mom, who was teaching me all of this. And then I quickly developed a good connection with my spirit guides, and around age of 16 is when I started working with Archangel Michael. And then I had an experience where I was also spontaneously doing mediumship readings for friends. But then I had an experience when I was 18 or 19 at a friend's house, and her stepfather committed suicide. And her mother wanted to know if I could receive messages from the stepdad. So I started receiving messages. I started giving the messages. I started seeing the images of how it happened, messages for the mom, messages for the daughter, all this stuff. And that was all really positive, and I was able to really support the family. But when I got back home, I felt, because I was 18 or 19, and I said, whoa, this is a really big responsibility, and I'm not sure if this is what I want. I'm not ready for this, and I just want to fit in, because I had always been different, and listening to my intuition. And I was in the library constantly, because this was before internet was really a thing. This was like in the early 2000s. And I was reading books about reincarnation, hypnosis, past lives, all this stuff, developing your psychic abilities. But it was a time where you couldn't really tell anybody, like in my friends group, like, hey, I'm reading past life books. So I kind of stopped, and then I went to college, and I wanted to just fit in. I wanted to be like everyone else. And I also I studied art, but I made the logical decision to quit that, and then I decided to get a degree in education, because I was like, I cannot make money off of art, off of like this intuitive painting. I need to do something that's reliable. And so with that, I also stopped using my intuition, channeling my guides and everything, because I just was trying to basically convince myself that I didn't need to be doing any of that. So, and then it was about 10, not really 10 years, a little under 10 years, that I managed to ignore them. And I ended up in an abusive marriage that was very traumatizing. I had a daughter, and because I ignored my intuition, because if I would have listened to my intuition, I would have never got married to that person. But I was meant to end up in a marriage with that person, because all these things are orchestrated by our higher self, because that was my catalyst to wake up again to my intuition. So that's what happened, because I ended up having to leave with my daughter, and I basically got to the point where my guides forced themselves through, like they forced the way through again, and my gifts started coming back. I started hearing them again. I got very clairvoyant again, and it was because they were like, you cannot ignore us any longer. Now we're gonna have to start to work together again. So that's what happened. And then they also said, if you say yes to us now, then you're going to go all the way. You're going to help other
Yeah,
people.
there's
It's
no
either yes or
turning back.
no. Hmm? So I said yes, and they started giving me the instructions on how to get out of the situation, what to do next, and that I had to do this for a living. I had to start helping others. And I'm sitting there because I was living in a trailer at that moment, and I was just praying, like, help me, show me, what do I have to do? And it made no sense because I had a 3-year-old. I had 2 suitcases, and 1 suitcase and a half was her stuff, and half a suitcase was my stuff. And I got on a plane and I went back to my mom's. And so that's what I did. And I had no money. I had no place to live. I had a 3-year-old, and I was like, okay, God, source, I will listen. I will never ignore you again. Show me what I have to do.
Yeah.
And that was in 2018. And here we are. So,
Yeah, well,
yep,
it's
that was
crazy, right?
kind of the story.
I
Mm-hmm.
can relate to that in another way, of course, but there are things that I can relate to. For me, it's different because I come from a family that has nothing to do with the spiritual things. Like they are very physical world, very physical oriented, so very logic. And you have to do this, and that is how it works. So for me, it was also this thing about, okay, I want to be normal, I want to fit in, even though I always felt different. But I never really got the chance to develop these abilities in my early years or even in my teenage years, because I never was surrounded by people that did the things. So for me, it was completely strange. Like that doesn't, the world doesn't work like that. So I came to discover actually and get more in touch with my spiritual side when I was 26. Like that's when I started to get more in touch with this side of me, and I started to look up for tarot and all these things. And it was actually when I got a Reiki initiation that for me was like the life changer, because I was going through a lot of pain. I was suffering from depression, anxiety, because even when I was following like the normal path and, school, high school, then college, then getting a job, all these things, I always felt that deep dissatisfaction, like an emptiness that was like, it wasn't going anywhere, like just an emptiness. So then I was like, what can I do? And then I got like this Reiki initiation, and I felt like an energy that came from my crown to my feet, like it just filled me. It filled me completely. And it was like something I have never felt before. It was just sublime. Like, what is this? And it was almost like I want to feel this again. It was almost like
Mm-hmm.
becoming a drug addict, like I want more of this energy. And yeah, I just got into it and started doing more Reiki, and that I feel like that was like like a domino, it was like the piece, and then everything just went down that way. And then, as you said, there's no turning back. Then it was like just one piece after another, falling and falling. And it was hard, of course, the spiritual awakening, realizing a lot of things, realizing that I was just like an accumulation of other people's beliefs and programs, and I wasn't that person really. So my identity was broken. Like I didn't knew who I was anymore. Like I was totally like in the void. I'm nothing. And well, then yeah, like a lot of things happen, and in all this process, yeah, more of connected with my intuition, right? More and more like learning to trust the path, to connect with the messages, to find synchronicities, to to trust what my body and my emotions are telling me, because they are always communicating. And as I said, even when you feel you are wrong, you are right. Even when you mess up, you are right, because it's still taking you where you have to be. It's still taking you to the lessons you have to take. So it's
Mm-hmm.
never wrong, really. And yeah, that's part of my story about how I get to my spiritual practice and all these things. So that's why self-discovery is like a big part of what I do, because it's like, until you have to know yourself, until you don't know yourself deep down, like your core soul essence, then you are just a program of society.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this reminds me of a podcast that I listened to yesterday of one of my best friends, Alexis. She's also on Instagram, and I did a podcast with her not too long ago. She recorded a podcast on her own yesterday, and it was all about basically embracing the chaos, and also that the spiritual journey indeed isn't all perfect. It's not meditation for 5 hours a day. It is not being super nice to people all the time, because being kind and nice are two very different things.
Mm-hmm.
You can be very kind to a person by setting a boundary. You can be very kind by, and that's the highest form of love, by being very transparent, by being very direct with a person. And sometimes we think, oh, we are not spiritual if we're not super overly nice to everyone, because that is what enlightenment is supposed to look like. I think we all know the story of Jesus throwing tables in the temple because he said, you are turning the house of my father into a marketplace, basically, where the temples had lost the connection with God, and they started selling items. They started turning it into a marketplace. They started sacrificing animals there. And if you go look at religion now, especially when you look at organized religion in the United States, for those that are in the US, churches here are vastly different. Like a church experience in the United States is completely different from going to church in probably also South America and Europe. It's very traditional. It's very simple. But when you see it here, like you get food at church, you get entertainment, there's like screens. Jesus would have thrown a fit completely. He would have said, you are making a mockery of my father's teaching. That's
Yeah.
what he would have said. And so in the chaos, you can find spiritual lessons. It's in all emotions. And I think it gives people permission to actually accept all parts of themselves and to see all parts of themselves as teachers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we are both the student and the teacher at the same time. Like in some areas we may be more advanced, in others we may be a beginner. So it's always to be open, you know. And now that we are talking about this, like, yeah, for example, how to navigate in this world that is like more logically oriented, like how can you trust that you are doing well, that it's not bad to listen to your intuition, because I feel like we all listen to our intuition in some way. It's just that we don't recognize it, but it is there. Like logic and intuition are like in this dance, you know, like they are in a dance where they interconnect and they're not separated. Anything
Mm-hmm.
is separated, really. So, what do you think about this?
Well, I think the more that you learn to trust your intuition and recognize the voice of your intuition, the easier that it becomes to also following that voice, no matter how illogical it sounds. And people often think the longer that you're on this journey, the easier it gets. No, you're going to be tested more in the absurdity sometimes of what God asks of you. And this book here, I knew I was going to need this book. This book, Anna, Grandmother of Jesus, is basically the metaphysical story of Jesus. It's a more mystical version of his life, and also how they are being asked to make some decisions that seem illogical. And in my life, I know that I've been asked to make some decisions that no sane person would have done. Some of the things that I've done, and if I would have played it safe, I would not have done any of these things. But I would also not have helped hundreds and hundreds of people with Akashic Records work, with healing, with mentorship. So it's in listening to that voice and not immediately seeing the results, but now years later, seeing the results of listening to this voice 5 years ago, 7 years ago, 10 years ago, that I was right to listen, even when it didn't make sense at the time.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And yeah, it's like a choice. You have to choose what kind of life you want for you, what do you really want to do, who you want to be, and then follow through with that, even if it seems illogical, even if others don't agree with that, even if others think differently, because I think this is part of how to navigate in some kind of way, and it is to understand that we all have part of the truth. Like, there's not a single truth. The truth is the whole. Like, we all have a little part of it. So we are both right and wrong at the same time, always, because we don't have like the full spectrum of everything that is happening and all the realities and all the context and all the full information. Like, we will always be lacking something. So,
and the thing is,
yes.
yeah, you cannot outsource your decisions to the people around you when only you know what is right for you.
Exactly.
And that's where I think we immediately are being taught to ignore our intuition the moment that you go to school or that you start talking, you start communicating as a toddler, and you start talking to your parents, to your caregivers, then in school to your teachers. And all you hear is you have to listen to the authority figures, you have to listen to the experts, you have to listen to the people around you because they all know better than you do. And we see this reflected in education. You have to listen to the experts. We saw it with COVID. You have to listen to the doctors. We see it in childbirth. You have to listen to the medical staff because you are a woman, but you don't know what your body's doing. You see it in so many things. So why would you believe this voice inside of you? And it may be the loudest voice ever. It may be so loud that it is overwhelming, that it is trying to be louder than all the voices around you. You're going to still choose to listen to everyone else that is telling you that's not real, that's impossible, what you're saying doesn't exist, because you have been programmed by a society, by an ancestral lineage, by your family, by the educational system, that what you are hearing or feeling or experiencing does not exist.
So, by the way, talking about that, like, how do you deal with that, or have you had like some kind of backlash, or people like making judgments about you when you talk about dragons, let's say? Because I know that a lot of people are really skeptical, so they will say like, dragons, like, what are you talking about? So how do you deal with that, or have you just connected with people that is really in the same like frequency, let's say?
I haven't really had any problems. I think it's also because I'm a natural hermit, kind of. So the people that I do talk to on a regular basis and about these things that I talk to in real life about these things are gonna be people that are gonna be somewhat understanding, at least somewhat, but I haven't really had to have that conversation yet, despite the fact that I've been doing this basically my whole life. I don't know. It hasn't really come up yet.
Well,
But
that's amazing in any case. You know, I feel,
yeah.
and I don't know, maybe this comes from a past life, I feel sometimes, because for me, a great theme and lesson has been to open my throat chakra, like to really express myself fully and be authentic and speak my truth, even when others might disagree or I might get criticism or judgment. And sometimes it feels like such a deep fear, as if I'm going to get killed or persecuted for saying the things that I have to say. And sometimes I'm also like, where does this fear comes from? It's so deep.
But
So,
that is true. I think I deliberately on a soul level chose to not have to go through that because I was going to speak about this and draw a bunch of people to me that were going to need help, because about 70% of all of the clients that I end up working with for Akashic Records have a throat block or had at some point a throat block. But I was really lucky, like I mentioned earlier, that my mom immediately normalized it for me. She normalized all of it for me. So I grew up feeling that this is like the most normal thing in the world to me, because she took me to classes with her, workshops, mediumship classes,
yeah, it's like
stuff like that,
normalized.
angel healing. And she just surrounded me with all of this material, with like-minded people. So because of her, I I also became very aware of, okay, I just have to surround myself with people that are open to this. And I somehow kind of created this boundary around these topics that I instinctively knew what version of myself to present to people. Like, I'm not going to be walking around and at the grocery store yelling, hey, dragons are real, or stuff like that.
Yeah, of course.
But I speak very openly about all of this on my online platforms. I've written stories, a PDF about the dragon history that I channeled. I do work around with the dragons, where I go deep with people into their dragons and the Akashic records. And if people are curious and they could ask me about it, then fine. But I haven't really had it come up yet that people are like, oh, you and your weird dragon stuff, oh, blah, blah, blah. That hasn't really come up, but I know that that is a thing that a lot of people go through, that they will have this point in their life where they have to confront their family with their beliefs, or their family and friends confront them with their beliefs. But because my family always knew who I was, because they've known me, like I was reading books about witchcraft. I was reading books on past lives, all this stuff ever since I was a child. So to them, they've always known, oh, it's you and your weird witchcraft stuff again. Like when I was 16 years old, my mom got me a witchcraft encyclopedia of like witchcraft and paganism from all around the world. And I unwrapped it at the dinner table with everybody there, my entire family, and their reaction is like, oh yeah, it's some witchcraft stuff again. So,
Wow,
but
like it's interesting because this really showed me the importance of normalizing things, and things can be normalized in a bad way, or I don't know to say bad, because I think there's no bad or good, but you know, in a way that can be more, how to say, more negative. No, it's not negative. I can find a word. Help me here.
with
Maybe more.
certain programming attached to a concept. Like, for instance, in your family, there was, or so just hypothetically speaking, let's say in your family, there was a program running of, oh, anything that's intuitive is it's airy fairy froofy stuff. It doesn't exist, whatever, or it's not something to be taken seriously. Whereas in my family, with my mom and my dad too, intuition was valued, it was important, it was a skill that should be cultivated. So
Wow,
that's the
yeah.
programming around it,
Yeah.
basically.
But it makes me think, like, in a broader sense, like how everything is about this in the world, because yeah, like there are so many different realities, like parallel realities, and we're all on different realities. So while for some people some things may be normal, for others
Hmm.
they aren't. And that's why I feel it's so important to know that our reality is not the only one, and like open our mind to new realities. And that's why I love connecting from with people from other places, for example, because I learn of those different realities. Like, my reality is not the only one, and my reality is still valid, but there are people that are on complete different realities, and their realities are valid as well. So yeah,
Hmm.
the importance of finding a space where you feel like you're normal in some kind of way, like your normal is my normal and things like that, and that you belong, because as humans we always look to belong. And yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's also being confident in yourself and knowing that, like I said earlier, you don't need the external validation. Because to me, my experiences are 100% valid, and there is like not a single person that could say anything to make me think that what I'm experiencing is not my reality. But I completely understand that the person over there in the house next door has a totally different reality, and they would have a very hard time understanding what I've been through or the things that I experience with my work. And I completely understand. And I think we have to realize you don't have to convince anybody else of your experiences. And that's where, again, the importance of finding validation within yourself
Yeah,
comes in when it comes to intuition and your inner experience.
yeah, exactly. So that's why I think, like, and I came to the realization that your intuition is always working for you. And your intuition might be wrong for others, but it's right for you, because you are
Mhm.
experiencing, you are hearing, you are seeing, you are perceiving what you need to. And sometimes people tend to make you delusional, like when you feel something. Let's say you are in an environment and you feel something coming from the other person, like an energy that is kind of icky, I don't know. And then let's say you talk to that person and you tell them like what's wrong here or whatever, and they are like, no, no, that's not the case. And then you're like, am I delusional? Am I really crazy?
Yes.
And then I have battled with that a lot. And I was like, how can I find that balance? Am I right? Am I wrong? And then I came again to the realization, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm right too. Maybe it's both things, but still I'm feeling what I need to feel. It's for me. Now,
Hmm.
why am I feeling that way? Why am I triggered because of that? That's my job. That's why I have to process and to heal or whatever. Yeah, so it's never about the other. That's true. It's never about the other person, more about you. And
Exactly. And yeah. It's also that they may not understand it, and if you don't understand something, then you will easily say that cannot be right, you must be wrong, because in my reality that cannot make sense, so you must be wrong.
yeah.
And often they're not doing it on purpose. It's just how they are experiencing life.
Mm-hmm. I see that someone commented here.
Hmm.
So we do not have to have our experiences validated because our soul and senses are guided. True.
Mm-hmm.
Totally
Yeah,
true.
exactly. And I think in the beginning, it's normal when you are first awakening to this world of intuition, of inner guidance. You're gonna do what you have been taught, and that is seek advice from the experts. So you're gonna go online, you're gonna try to find all this stuff on YouTube, spirituality, ascension, 5D, star seeds, and you start to
Mm-hmm.
research all the stuff. And then you end up in this ocean of just so much overload of information,
Mm-hmm.
and that's that can be even more confusing because you hear contradictions. You hear one person say, this is the way to enlightenment. This is what you have to do. You need to meditate every day. If you're not meditating, you're not doing it right. You cannot be holding on to anger. You cannot be doing this. You can never be angry. And another person says, you have to feel the anger. And you're there like, what am I? What do I do? I don't know what to do.
Yeah, it's a lot of overload. So that's why, again, it's important, like, what resonates to you, what do you feel inside you? That's the only answer.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you do what you feel it's right, even when it's wrong.
Yeah. And I also
And,
believe that everyone does serve a purpose, and because there's a lot of duality, a lot of polarity, even in the whole spiritual community. There's people that will believe one thing and they will be really convinced about that, and they will be like, if you're saying something else, then you are not doing it right, whatever. And your belief system can also evolve.
yeah.
So I believe that you can find people, for instance, you will find people on YouTube or somewhere else, or blogs that people are
Mm-hmm.
writing that you really resonate with, and that actually are very helpful for you on your journey.
Mm-hmm.
And then a few years later, you see gaps, or you see things that just don't resonate, and then you outgrow these people, and you can find somebody else, and that doesn't mean they were wrong,
Mm-hmm.
because they did help you. You did gain benefit from their content, for instance.
Yeah, that's totally true. Because, yeah, we're constantly evolving. That's the thing as well. Like, we are changing. We are not the same person we were, I don't know, some months ago, some years ago. Like, we become other people. So we're allowed to change, and we're allowed to change our minds and to change our beliefs. And yeah, that's where I feel most people get stuck in, like, making a belief or an identity so rigid, like, I'm this and that's it, and I don't have any space to outgrow that or to go beyond that, like, this is it.
Mm-hmm.
And no, we are allowed to change our minds. And life in general is, it's so complex, so broad, so contradictory. Like, there's
Yep.
always, you can find contradictions everywhere in everything. Like, that's why you won't find like a single truth. That's kind of impossible. So yeah,
And
you
you can
just,
even agree. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
no,
interrupt,
it's
but
okay.
I'm going to forget what I was saying, because you can also agree with certain things that a person is saying, but disagree with other things they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Because, for
Mm-hmm.
instance, there's one YouTuber that I really enjoyed a lot in 2018, that I used to watch a lot, that did a bunch of esoteric research, because that is one thing I do value. When people do their research into ancient esoteric teachings that can be confirmed from ancient mystery schools. And anyway, so I really enjoyed this person's content, but now recently she's kind of made a shift and started saying some things that I really didn't like anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, they seem to have changed in one direction, and I'm like not agreeing with that. I still agree with a lot of other stuff they're saying, but I'm not necessarily agreeing with everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that is also something that we can do, because we are our own teachers.
Mm-hmm.
We are, like, if it doesn't feel right, you don't have to just accept what somebody says because like the rest of what they're saying resonates. Doesn't mean you have to accept everything that they're saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because yeah, we can take different perspectives. I also feel like it's good to have people around that maybe doesn't completely think the same or feel the same, because that also keeps you grounded in some kind of way. It keeps you like, okay, uh, kind of outside your bubble. Because if you go to the extreme where you are only like surrounded by people who thinks exactly like you, or by information that is resonating totally with you and your reality, then you are losing all the other things in life and in the world that are also valid and real. So
Mm-hmm.
it's important to have that balance.
Yeah, because what you get then is you create an echo chamber of people that are basically just mirroring the same stuff you're saying, and they're not challenging your belief systems. And it's really good, I feel, because, like, again, Jesus, I know I mentioned him a lot, but when I say Jesus, I mean metaphysical Yeshua.
Yeah.
And like, he would go and speak to people in the villages. He would go and speak to people of different belief systems, and he would say, let's have a dialogue. Where do we find each other? Where do we meet? And where do we have different views? And how can we understand each other's view of the world and learn and maybe adjust our own view a little bit? Because this planet is a playground for us to come and expand, and we expand through interaction with other people that have their own experiences, so that we can then kind of expand our own experience. And that's the whole point of this journey, I feel.
Totally, totally. I agree with that. So I think we're almost, I don't know if it's already an hour, but maybe let's talk a
About an
little bit
hour.
about about what's missing. I think maybe how to recognize or the tools to improve or develop our intuition for people that maybe is not that attuned to their intuition. So
Yes.
I don't know if you want to.
Like, some intuitive development advice. And also, anybody watching this now live, if you have any questions or any suggestions or things you would like us to go deeper into, I think I have about half an hour that I can stay still. So if anybody wants to get into anything, just put it in the comments. But like, I was talking with Samantha a little few days ago. 2 days ago, we had a short phone call where I gave her some examples of the stuff that I teach people in my free course. I have a free intuitive development course, and some things that people say is, oh, I cannot feel my intuition. What is intuition? How do I recognize this? And everyone has a gut feeling. Everyone has that. You can be the most logical, rational person. You're still going to have a gut feeling because it's just physical. It's a physical reaction. And there are different ways that you can actually feel your intuition through the body if you are not used to working with intuition. And that is, for example, let's say a hypothetical example. You have a job and you don't dislike your job, but you are also not like, wow, this is the job of my life, this is my dream job. But you may have a chance to get a different job and you're not sure if you should take it, and your intuition is then going to try to tell you what you should do, and you can feel it in your body. But because most humans are so disconnected fully from their body, they don't know what they are feeling. They don't know, because often people confuse anxiety for, this is good, we have to do this. And that's where for instance, when I was not listening to my intuition and I was actually feeling anxiety and I was picking up on the fact that I was with a narcissist, I was thinking, this is good, this feels good, this is love. No, it was anxiety. But now I know that, of course, 10 years later. But when, let's go back to the example of the job. So imagine if you just fully visualize with your eyes closed, staying in your old job, and don't judge anything that you're feeling, but just feel how your body feels for 30 seconds to a minute. And then you do the same thing with the other option of going for the other job, taking the other job, for instance. And what does that feel like? And you don't analyze, you just kind of feel what that feels like. And then you start writing everything down. And then you read, for instance, in the first example, you can read, oh, I felt frozen. I felt heavy. I felt constricted. And in the other option, you read, I felt light. I felt open, relaxed. I felt like your energy feels big, or your body felt good, your stomach felt relaxed. That is your intuition telling you that the second option is way better for you. Even if it mentally scares you, your body is never gonna trick you.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I feel like in my case, I feel my intuition a lot in my heart. Like it's like it opens or it contracts. And also like, yeah, these bodily sensations, like when I hear something or I'm very perceptive, so for me body language and all those things, like I can read, I can almost read people like and when these things happens, yeah, I have like bodily sensations, like something passing me through. And then I'm like, okay, what is this telling me? And for me, the tool that has worked a lot is journaling. I feel like journaling, as you said, writing, because that's where you really start finding patterns and like how is this situation similar to this other situation that I already experienced, let's say. And then the more you write and the more you do this, it's like, you know, you go down the rabbit hole. It's like more and more and more comes up. So that's how you connect more with your intuition as well. And of course, meditation and mindfulness. Connecting with nature is also a big part, I feel. Because when you are in nature, it's like you can really, you know, you see the water or the trees or whatever, and it's like some things are really tiny and then others are really big, and you start making all these connections and feeling more connected. That is actually the point of everything, feeling connected to yourself and feeling connected to the outside world.
Yes. And I think it's important that when you start out on this spiritual journey and you come from religion or you come from atheism, it doesn't matter. The cultural programming in the West, at least, is that, oh, in order to be spiritual, I have to ignore my body, I have to ignore the physical, natural world around me, and I have to fully devote myself to the ethers, to spirit, to energy. And that is also what we learn in traditional Christianity. For instance, I'm just naming that as an example because that's my background, of course. But when you go look at the Essene Mystery School, the group of Gnostics that Jesus was a member of, they specifically state in their scriptures, the Gnostic scriptures, they say you cannot know God if you don't know the mother first. You can only get to know the Father by getting to know the mother first. Because just like a baby first gets to know its mother, then it gets to know the Father. So without Mother Earth, without connecting to nature, without connecting to the ground that you walk on, to the water, to the elements, you cannot truly anchor in spirit, the energy of the Father, the masculine. So it's a combination of your body and your spirit, and then you are going to be most balanced in your spiritual experience. That's been my experience too, and I'm pretty sure that's been your experience too.
Yeah, sure. when I lived like for 2 years in the mountains, and I had actually my spiritual awakening there, and I felt like that was revealing because I lived in the city most of my life. So when I was living in the mountains, and there were waterfalls, and I had a
Mm-hmm.
volcano like behind my house, basically. So very potent energy. It was like a portal for me. So yeah, feeling that connection, it was like coming back to my femininity first. So as you said, connecting with the mother first. And as I balanced my feminine more and more, I felt also more connected to the masculine side.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, yeah, that balance. And I feel maybe for men, it also goes the other way around. When they balance their masculine, they get to meet their feminine, something like that.
Yeah. Yep. And let's see, we have a question. Christine says, I would love to hear your understanding about the bird species galactic connection. One time you shared briefly on a channel, and I was wondering about that. I'm assuming you're talking to me. Understand bird species galactic. Yes. Well, I feel that birds are angelic emissaries. And that's also why I have a feather right here. And I got this tattooed actually during my years of avoiding spirituality. They still made their way through because I was seeing feathers everywhere, even though I was ignoring all of my guides. I was ignoring all of the spirit messages. I still kept finding feathers. Even in my apartment with the windows closed, there were feathers. And I feel specific birds, like when you look at Christianity, the dove is the symbol of Christianity. But when we look at galactic, of course, star systems, there is the Andromeda galaxy and the golden avians and blue avians. Those are a specific type of being that if you have the angelic realm, that's how I've seen it anyway in the akashic records, then the angels basically, in essence, we are all angelic beings. And then God, source creator, whatever you want to call it, wanted to expand creation and said, let's start playing around. Let's create entire universes where these angelic beings start to get more form, where this energy becomes more solid. And that is how, for example, the Andromeda galaxy with the golden avians as being one of the beings that are a part of that galaxy was created. So I believe that there are these big bird type of beings. I've seen them and they look like gigantic golden eagles. They're just the size of a plane. They are really big, and they are also connected to the seraphim and to the dragons. So all of these are kind of subcategories of angelics, and they are basically more advanced versions of ourselves too.
Mm-hmm.
And then here we still have their messengers, basically, like certain birds. There's people that have very telepathic connections. Look at certain Native Americans that had extremely telepathic connections with eagles and hawks and others. In the Middle Ages, there were people, Europeans, people that had telepathic connections with owls, with hawks that could train them. All of those are types of angelic messengers, I feel.
Wow, that's very interesting. Yeah, it's a whole different realm, right? It feels like it goes so deep.
But I feel a lot of animals are specific messengers, and this is something that I could go on about for a while. Certain animals that come from certain star systems originally and that were seeded basically here, and the roles that they play on the planet, supporting humanity. They all have their specific role to play.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, so as she said, it's very interesting. You should do a workshop, definitely.
Yeah, I used to do animal communication readings in the past, but because I was doing so much different things, I stopped. But it's something I still do, but it's not on my website. But people can still message me about it, and I occasionally still do like animal readings. And a lot of dogs, for instance, have connections with their owners from other star systems where they would support them and help with grounding, specifically where they help ground the person's energy in. They're kind of an extra battery for all this energy that the person is pulling in from the angelic realm, from other star systems, from their star family. And they are helping their person to ground in this energy. And cats are kind of the opposite. Cats are the amplifiers. They're going to be like this extra thing that you can plug into yourself, energetically speaking. A cat comes and plugs into you and is like, here, now you're going to be able to receive even more frequencies. They're going to be your psychic assistant, basically.
That's very interesting. I actually, when I lived in the mountains, I, I arrived to that place and there were already there two dogs and they stayed there with me and I felt such a connection to those dogs. I had like kind of a psychedelic trip and I I felt like they were my family, like they were my soul tribe. And yeah, I had kind of a bad trip and yeah, I was crying and they came to me like, and when I hugged them, it was like I was just crying and I was like basically hearing from them like, do you recognize us? Do you recognize us? And I was like, yeah.
Yeah, because I believe that they can come into your life for just a little bit, that you have a meeting, or you can choose to have an entire lifetime, like their lifetime with you. And I also have seen that many pets reincarnate again with the same person because they have a soul contract. So they may have ended, like their life may have ended, but their mission with you may not be over. So they're going to come back. But because you're shifting, they are also going to have to shift with you. And it's going to be more convenient maybe for them to come back as another type of dog, as another animal perhaps, because the mission has also slightly shifted. But our soul families consist of humans, but also of animals. And our spirit guides are also part of our soul family. Even though they're non-physical, they're still a part of our soul family. And a lot of guides have been with us in other incarnations, either in spirit form or physical form.
Wow. Yeah, for me it was very sad when I had to separate from this doggy. I felt him like a child, almost like he was my son. But when I came from Ecuador to the States, I couldn't bring him here. And it was like very sad. But yeah, I always think about him. It's like, oh, yeah, maybe we will find each other again.
Yeah. Yeah, and they always say like you're gonna recognize them if you're gonna recognize their energetic signature. And I've heard stories from people that said certain behaviors that the old dog would have, that they got a new dog and it would act in the exact same strange way, and that they even used the old dog's name. They would say the name and the dog reacted to the name and stuff like that. So I think there's so much that we don't know about our companion animals, pets, cats, whatever, even rabbits, birds. I think all of them have a mission with us.
We're connected to the whole. That's what I think and what I always say. Like we are connected to everything. Like deep down, yeah, we are one. And if we really want to, like I almost feel that like if you really want to feel, let's say, and that's why I also work with archetypes, let's say, because everything is like connected and everything is symbolism. So if you want to feel I don't know, free as an eagle, then you visualize like that eagle, and then you
Mm-hmm.
feel that you are flying and that you are that eagle, right? And you almost can feel it in yourself, and you can like implement energies like from all these different archetypes in yourself by meditating, visualization, and all these things. So it's very interesting. It's like
Mm-hmm.
you can connect to all these whole different frequencies, realities, energies.
Yeah, and there are certain people that claim that humans will only incarnate as humans and animals will only incarnate as animals, but that is not at all what I have seen in the Akashic records. Because most people that I've seen, they have also had animal lifetimes or lifetimes as an elemental or another type of non-human being. And like, because I think it's Dolores, this is a good example of somebody who I greatly respect, Dolores Cannon, who is now sadly deceased, but she's one of my main inspirations when it comes to hypnosis, when it comes to Akashic Records work, Dolores Cannon. Her books, I recommend her books to everyone that wants to learn more about quantum physics, about the universe, about the subconscious mind, about the Akashic Records. But she has always stated, and she never stopped believing that until the day that she died, because she had never seen it in her work, that humans simply don't incarnate as animals. And I have seen more, I have not seen any humans that like never had anything else than a human experience. Most people always had some kind of other experience. And there's humans that have been animals because they wanted that experience, because it added value to their soul on the whole, to have that experience, because like you said, they are still channeling those experiences from other dimensions and timelines of the soul. Because the soul is basically a big spider web, we're all connecting these threads of experience through time, space, reality, and you're still connecting to those aspects of yourself where you were, for instance, a bird. I know a girl and she was a dolphin in a past life. I know a guy, he was a hawk in a past life. Another good friend of mine, Georgina, who is also a hypnotist, she was a seagull, and she has a very vivid past life experience that she remembers where she was killed as this seagull. So, and these things all contribute to who we are right now in this lifetime.
So a question: when you can see this clearly, let's say when you go to Akashic Records or these things, like you see it like clearly.
Yes, so that's something. When I was younger, I was mainly working with angels and channeling and working with fairies, elementals, nature. And I was always very intrigued by past lives. And I had my first past life regression when I was 17. My mom was the one that guided the journey.
Wow.
I still remember, with a book from the library, a library book with a script, like a super basic standard past life hypnosis script. And she guided me through it. And I have always been clairvoyant. I've always seen images very clearly. But I thought that was just everyone. I thought everyone closed their eyes and saw stuff. No, that was not true. I only discovered a long time like later. So anyway, I've always been clairvoyant, but it was not up until that point. So let's say in 2017, I was aware of past lives, of course. And how old was I? 30. I think about 30 years old when that happened, and I had that past life regression at 17. So I knew, okay, past lives exist. I have evidence of past lives, all this stuff. And then in 2017, I had an experience, and I have mentioned it in a few other videos, and I've also written about it in my blogs. And in the book that I'm working on right now, I'm working on a book all about other timelines, past lives, channeled information from other timelines. And I saw an entire past life collapsing with this timeline, and I basically saw like a movie screen of this entire life that I have lived in another timeline.
Wow.
And I knew everything like instantly. It's like the download was activated about that lifetime. I knew everyone's role in that lifetime. I knew what they did. I knew who they were now, why we came back, what the soul contract was, what my role was, what their role was, all of this stuff. And I started reversing the process because it came to me spontaneously, and I said, how can I now call the information to me? So I started doing that with the help of my guides. I started diving into my own akashic records. Then I started experimenting with friends, and I was always able to see very clearly. So the images would come immediately, and then as I would kind of put myself into this state of self-hypnosis and then access the akashic records, I was able to guide the journey kind of like a GPS and say, I want to know this, now let's go there, let's find out this is the question that this person has, let's find the answers. And I would start seeing the images like a movie that plays, and then I would get the information as the scenes started to unfold, basically.
Wow, that's amazing. Sounds amazing.
So that's what I do now mainly for people is Akashic Records. And I also create the images with it because I am able to see everything. But I feel like if I can give them an image that closely resembles what I'm seeing, it may trigger for them other images. They may not be naturally clairvoyant, or it may be suppressed because, like I said in the beginning, I believe we are all naturally intuitive. And by giving somebody an image, it may trigger something and they may start to see their own images.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it might. In my case, I feel like I'm more clarisentient and claricognizant. Like I feel it in my body, or I receive like a lot of mental information. Like that's why I love writing. Like I feel lots of downloads of information, and it's like writing. Sometimes it's a full day of writing, you know. But yeah, more like seeing things clearly. No, I really don't. And sometimes I don't know if I would like that because it must be kind of heavy too, or I don't know.
Yes, and that's also something that I teach in my course of opening up these gifts. I also teach people how to control them because it's like a phone. You have your flashlight on your cell phone. Imagine if you have that flashlight on all day long, the battery is going to be drained right away. Your phone is going to die. Within 2 hours, you have to plug in your phone. So you have these gifts. You can turn on this bright light. You can turn on all the gifts. You can start, you say, open up all my field completely so that you can perceive everything around you. But do you want that to be on for 24 hours? Not necessarily. And in the beginning, when a lot of people first open up to all of this, it's very hard to find the off switch, and it's going to be very overwhelming. So that's what I also... Yeah, good ways to do that are to have daily structure of recharging your energy and shielding yourself. And what can that look like, shielding yourself? That's where the dragons also come in. We have an entire team, a spirit entourage. We don't have to do this all alone. That's another program that we receive from the moment that we're born. You have to do all of this alone. It's like a badge of honor if you're able to achieve something without the help of other people. And here we are with this entire spirit entourage that wants nothing more than to help us. And we're like, nope, I'm doing it on my own. I'm fine. I don't need your help.
Yeah.
So
it's
For
crazy.
instance,
Like there's some resistance like in the path, and when you haven't been connected as I was, yeah, at some point there's like, no, I can trust that I can receive help, and if I don't receive help from people around me, how can I trust that I will receive help from spirit guides or something that I don't see? That's even more crazy. So yeah,
mhm.
we working in trusting in trust is like very important.
Yeah, and you're gonna believe sometimes, like we said in the beginning, like, what is this? This is completely insane. This cannot be true, but it is true. A lot of this stuff is true, even, well, it is true. If you are perceiving it, it is true in some reality. So, because that's what we hear a lot as children, oh, you're making it up. Yeah, you're just seeing things that aren't real. You're lying. A lot of children hear, oh, you are lying again. You're trying to get attention. When most people that are intuitive naturally, they don't want any attention. They want to just evaporate into the background. The last thing they want is for all eyes to be on them.
Exactly. Yeah, I guess it must be really hard. And it is hard. Like, I mean, I had a hard childhood, and I can't imagine for people that, let's say, it's clairvoyant. It must be kind of harder, I think, because you really see things. And then if you are not believed, it must be very hard.
Yeah, and I was lucky enough that my mom, when I told her these things, she never really told me, oh, that's not true. So I think that makes a very big difference. And the same thing with my daughter, like she automatically saw things, she was hearing things, and because I always encouraged her, because she saw that I was doing this stuff, um, for a while, I also had a spiritual magazine. It's not active anymore right now, but we would have monthly magazines. We would interview people, other spiritual people, astrologers, healers, intuitive painters, all kinds of stuff. And she had her own little column in the magazine, and she
That's weird.
spoke about, she called it the Angel Hotel, and it was specifically for children. It was a column specifically for other kids to encourage them. What you're seeing in your head is real. There's a world, and you're seeing it. And she described in children-like terms this angelic realm where she would go when she meditated in the evening before she went to sleep, and her spirit guides, and how they could help you when you were sad, how they could help you when you were overwhelmed. And she would give advice for other kids. And I think, I know we're getting sidetracked a little, that because we are more intuitive, that we are naturally going to raise our children in a way different, in a different way than the way that we were raised.
Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful to encourage children and people in general to connect with their inner world, with their imagination, because everything starts there in our imagination. Like every creation that we see, it started there in our imagination, in an idea. So it's beautiful to encourage that, and I feel it's part of the new paradigm and of the new earth that is being created right now. Because
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we're going through all this ascension process, and yeah, it may take a long time, I feel. Or I don't know, sometimes I'm like, things are changing at the same time they are not. Sometimes you get kind of skeptic, like everything is chaos and everything is violence and wars and things. So it seems like we're not going anywhere. But at the same time, I'm hopeful. Like I see more and more people getting into these areas of spirituality and intuition and community, and like making a better world for us and for everyone. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think we can see how different it is already, like just generation compared to generation, because I was born in 1986, so I'm gonna be 38, and I can already see how some of my friends that are about 10 years younger, how they grew up in a more open world where it was easier to talk about this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because because I've been into spirituality ever since I was a child. I remember that you had like these psychic fairs, and oh no, if somebody sees you go in there, they're gonna talk about you, make fun of you at school.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh my God, nobody sees me, right? Okay, let's go in. Or in the library, like, okay, I have to be kind of secretive about this because, oh, you're a weird hippie. You're reading books about past lives. Now,
Yeah.
or yoga. Going to yoga class was considered a little bit weird when I started doing it, or meditating. Oh, you meditate? Why? Why would you do that? Now it's very much accepted. It's normal. There are books for children on children meditation. In school, they started doing meditation classes, mindfulness activities for children in elementary school and high school. This is all becoming normal.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm happy about that. I'm really happy that the new generations will be more, I don't know, open. They will be more free to be themselves, free to be authentic, to express themselves, and that's basically what I think will create a better world. Like because so many people is kind of in anger because they are repressed. So yeah, it's very important that people feel free, and
Yeah.
that's where everything starts.
And I think by the time that my daughter, she's going to be 10 in October, when she's 20 or when she's 30, her kids are going to grow up in a world that's even more open-minded to all this stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So well, we
Mhm.
have talked a lot of things. We
Yeah.
went like many different ways, but I think it's very valuable
Yeah.
and very interesting information.
Yeah, I could keep on going and I could talk about this for a long time, but I think this would probably be a good time to wrap it up. We kind of kept it to the topic of intuition, and we kind of went a little bit all
Values.
around that. But
Yeah,
we can
values.
definitely do another one where we focus on some other topics a little more. We can definitely do this again.
For sure, I would love it. I have really enjoyed this conversation. I'm kind of sad that you couldn't see me, but you could hear me.
Yeah, I was still able to hear you, and I'm gonna watch the replay so that I can see you, so that I
Yeah.
can actually see what the conversation looked like.
Yeah. But it has been fun, and thank you so much. And thank you
Hmm.
for whoever watched it and will watch in the future.
Yes, and if anybody is interested, real quick, in just a free course to develop your intuition, don't hesitate to reach out to me. It has super easy tips and tricks in there. You don't need any spiritual background. It's just all really easy, and everyone can do it.
Yeah. Maybe even I will take it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's in my Facebook group. It's video based and it's completely free.
that's great. Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye bye.
So we will see you later. Bye.
Bye.